So your 3.5 EcoBoost is rattling on cold startup. Stick around to find out all the new information that I've learned because a lot has changed in the last few months. So what's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Mason. I'm a senior master tech with Ford. I work at a Ford dealership, and pretty much here at the channel, everything we do is Ford related, or at least somewhere included in the automotive industry. If you haven't already, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button so that you can find your way back to the channel. Bell notifications on so that you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Also, if you enjoy the content today, make sure you go down there and hit that like button. It really helps me out. So the 3.5 EcoBoost cold start rattle, this is a major problem with the F-150s. I've actually already done 2 videos about this issue. One was about the 5.0 and the 3.5. I went super into depth about phasers, Vct phasers, and how they work and all that. So if you haven't went and checked out those 2 videos, they will be somewhere up here. Go watch them first because I'm not going to include all the details about what trucks this problem applies to. I'm not going to include all that details. The only thing I'm going to talk about in this video is the updates and what has changed in the last couple months. So the first thing, I actually mentioned this in my last video, it is the recall 21B10. I mentioned this recall specifically just because it is probably the most important one out of the 3 that I'm going to talk about in this video. 21B10 is the updated PCM reprogram for these F-150s. This has been out for around 6 or 7 months now. It came out, we stopped doing it for a little while just because they were having some issues with the programming with a shutter issue. We are back doing them now. You can have these done at the dealer. So the first thing that I want to tell you about 21B10, this is the recall that updates the PCM strategy to allow more oil flow to the cylinder heads to help correct the cold start rattle on these 3.5 EcoBoost. Very first thing I want you to know is that the 21B10 recall, if it is done by February 23rd, 2022, it will open up 2 more recall campaigns. It will open up 21N03 and 21N08. That is very important because the 21N03 recall is actually a extended coverage out for cam phaser replacement. If you do not have this 21B10 done by February 23rd of 2022, it will not open up this recall campaign, and therefore you will not be eligible for the extended warranty that is included in 21N03. The reason I tell you about doing that 21B10 before February 23rd, 2022 is because that date is coming up so fast, and I don't want any of you to miss out on the extended warranty coverage that Ford is offering if you have that PCM reprogram done at a dealer. I don't want you guys to miss out on that, so I want to make sure that everyone that I can tell is informed about when and how and what needs to be done about that recall. 21B10, if you get a letter in the mail, go have the repair done. Go have the PCM updated. All right, so now that I got that out of the way, I want to talk a little bit. There's, like I said earlier, there's 3 recalls that apply to this engine for this one issue. We got 3 recalls for one issue, and believe me, they are very confusing. They actually confused me a lot when they first come out. I didn't even quite completely understand exactly what all of them were for and why we had to have 3 different recall campaigns for one problem. It didn't make any sense to me, but I've pretty much figured it out at this point, and I want to try to help simplify it for some of you at home that might not quite fully understand what's going on with these recalls. So like I said earlier, 21B10 is the updated PCM reprogram. It's a PCM strategy that boosts the oil flow to the cylinder heads to try to help correct this Vct Phaser rattle, because when that recall first came out, I really did not understand how we were fixing a mechanical part out on the engine with a PCM, a software, how we were taking a software update and fixing a mechanical part. It just didn't make any sense to me, but now that I kind of understand the tweaks that they made in that software to try to help this problem, I do understand in what they're doing, and I agree that that is probably the best course of action in a lot of these cases, is to just update the PCM and try to push more oil flow to the cylinder head so that you can get ahead of that Vct Phaser rattle. So now that we know what 21B10 is, we're gonna move on to the next recall, which is 21N03. 21N03 is actually a extended warranty coverage, like I said earlier, that extends the warranty coverage out for those VCT phasers. So I mentioned that in my last video about the 21N03 and how it extended the warranty coverage, but I'm just gonna tell y'all one more time, and I'm gonna read it straight off the sheet so that I don't mess it up. The warranty coverage up to 69,999 miles, it will cover 100%. 70,000 to 80,000 is 66%, 80,000 to 90,000 is 33%, and anything over 90,000 Ford's not paying anything for. So you're not getting a lot of extended coverage, but you are getting some, so you want to make sure that you have done that 21B10 so that you can have this recall apply to you. I work at a Ford dealership, and most of the time I like Ford's product, and I agree with some of the stuff they do. I definitely disagree with some of the stuff they don't do, but I want to read y'all a paragraph from this published recall, the 21N03 for the extension. I just want to read this small paragraph. So it's talking about the knocking noise on the cold start rattle and the noises that it makes. It says, these concerns should be addressed by the updated calibration provided in Field Service Action 21B10. However, for peace of mind, Ford is providing an extended warranty for customers who receive the PCM update under program 21B10 prior to February 28, 2022 and continue to experience cam phaser noise after receiving the PCM update. So what this means is just because you had the PCM update doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get your phasers replaced if you're within that mileage. The problem has to be there for this extended coverage to apply. But I just wanted to make note of that this was this is more of a customer satisfaction thing than it actually is something that Ford's actually been required to do by the NHTSA or whoever regulates that kind of thing. It's not a safety recall, it's a customer satisfaction extended warranty program. So now that we understand what recall 21B10 is, and we understand that 21B10 opens up 21N03, which extends the warranty coverage out for our VCT phasers. Now we understand both of those recalls. I feel like I have more than describe those in a way that every person can understand. We're gonna move on to the third and final recall, and this actually goes back to what I mentioned earlier. I mentioned this in my last video as well about the 21B10. So what happened was, they first came out with the 21B10 update to try to solve these cam phaser issues. So Ford dealers started doing them. We even did a couple. I'm sure some dealers done a lot of them in a short time, just because different sizes, different stuff happens, whatever. So what's actually happening with this PCM update is it's causing a engine shudder, is what Ford's describing it as. I actually have not seen one of these vehicles that had this engine shudder, so I can't really describe what it does, but what I'm assuming that it does is at idle and at real low RPMs, it has like a little bit of shudder because of the added oil flow. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read you straight from Ford what they say the reason for this 21N08 recall is, and now I hope you guys can see why it's so confusing. You got 21B10, you got 21N08, you got 21N03, and all of them are something different. This one opens up that one. It gets really confusing. So it says, in a very low percentage of the affected vehicles, an engine shudder may develop after receiving the PCM update provided in program 21B10. Ford, they love this phrase. This is the second time that I've read this out of something. For peace of mind, Ford is providing a no-cost, one-time repair for customers who receive the PCM update after program 21B10 to revert the PCM calibration back to the original software. So what that means is that if you take your vehicle in, you have the 21B10 perform, you have the PCM updated, you leave, you got no rattle anymore, or maybe you didn't even have one to begin with, you just had the update done. You leave and now you have an engine shudder. Ford has you bring the vehicle back to us. We take then and put the original file back in the PCM instead of the updated oil pressure that we did in the 21B10. It honestly blows my mind that this is what they did, that this is their fix for this problem. I have never, ever seen Ford issue a PCM update and then issue another recall to revert that PCM update back to the original if the one that we did the first time gives problems. You see how confusing this is. I hope you guys can understand why this is so confusing for so many people, and even confusing for us techs. Like, hell, it took us a while really to figure out what was even going on with this. So that is the 3 recalls that apply to this 3.5 liter EcoBoost. Honestly, I hope they make more sense now than what they did before you watched that 10-minute explanation of what they were. One other question I'm gonna keep on this topic. 21B10, is 21B10 actually fixing these rattles? I don't know. I really don't. I see some that I update the PCM, they leave here and they call me 2 days later and tell me it's still rattling. I see some that I update the PCM on, they leave and I never hear from them again. That tells me that either it's still rattling and that customer just doesn't care, or maybe possibly it is fixing some of them. It is helping some with the cold start rattle. I don't really know. It's honestly kind of still a little bit too soon to tell, but I will say, if you have the 21B10 done and you're within the mileage, you're less than 90,000, Ford will at least cover partial cost of that repair. All right, so our second thing, this is something that I did not cover in either of the previous videos that I've done on this topic. And honestly, I bet I've been asked this one question 200 times. It is the most popular question in a comment that I've ever been asked. Is what happens if I don't fix the rattle? If you didn't fix the rattle, if your vehicle, your F-150 or your Expedition has this cold start rattle and you didn't fix it, I'm gonna give you Ford's answer to that question. Ford's answer is a cam phaser that has developed an undesirable noise. It's crazy they call a rattle an undesirable noise. Of course it's undesirable, nobody wanna hear that. A cam phaser that has developed an undesirable noise does not affect the vehicle's safety, performance, or emissions. To answer that question, no, it's not gonna hurt anything. If you can deal with the rattle in the morning, it shouldn't cause any other issues, according to Ford. Will it or not? I don't really know. I don't know any customers that has ever, that had the rattle and just let it keep rattling. I haven't seen one that they started rattling at 50,000 and then the customer just kept driving it until it had 200,000. I don't know if it will cause any long-term effects. I know Ford says it won't. Ford's usually right. Usually. So I honestly don't know. The only answer that I can really give you about that question is what Ford has published, because they're the ones that engineer and design this engine and that should know, is that really hurting anything else? Is it causing any effects to, like they said, the safety, performance, or emissions? And they say no. So I'm gonna stick by that answer, and that's just gonna be the answer I have. So moving on from that question, the last thing that I wanna tell you guys about this new that I have learned actually came from a comment on YouTube. This is a fellow Ford technician, and I know it feels like I've been reading y'all a lot of stuff during this video, but I really just wanna read y'all this comment because I read it and I actually learned a few things from what he said. So I'll probably post this comment up where you can see it and read along with me as I go through it. This guy's name is Mark S. I don't know his last name, but he commented on my last video that I done about these Vct Phasers. He said he's a Ford tech in Houston, and he was telling me some things about it, and I found it very, very interesting. So I'm just gonna read it to y'all and kind of make some notes as I go along. So Mark says, I'm a Ford tech in the Houston, Texas area, and I want to share what we have been seeing. First, the 21B10 recall is a go again, and I'm almost just gonna skip this whole paragraph because this is talking about the same things that I was just talking about with the 21B10 causing the shutter issues, so I'm gonna skip that first paragraph. He says, anyways, after further testing in collaboration with Hotline and Field Service Engineer, which if you don't know what a Field Service Engineer, that is each area, there's a bunch of different areas in the United States, and each area has their own field service engineer that is employed by Ford that is supposed to give us assistance in problems that is very, very hard to find or very, very hard to diagnose and fix. So that's what a field service engineer is. So he says, with Hotline and Field Service Engineer, we found that the camshaft mega caps are leaking. If you don't know what the camshaft mega caps are, they are the big caps out on the very far end, closest to the front cover of the engine. They're the big main mega caps. It's one huge mega cap that does both cams, and it actually has the solenoid, and it controls a lot of your oil flow, flows through it. All that is out there in that mega cap. That's what he's talking about when he says mega cap. So he said Ford already has updated the heads to fix this, but as you can probably guess, they are on back order. Imagine that. The old mega caps were secured with only 3 bolts. The new heads come with 4-bolt mega caps. On the trucks we had shuttering issues before 21B10 was reactivated. We were instructed by hotline and field service engineer to replace heads and cams. That's a very, very big repair. That is, you know, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 repair is that would be much more expensive than just replacing the VCT phaser. He says now they will probably not have anyone do this for now because they came up with a way to reprogram back to the old PCM file. So that's exactly what we were talking about with the new 21N08. So if you do the 21B10 and it experiences the shutter, then we revert it back to the original file. That's their way around actually replacing the heads and cams on these 3.5s. So Mark says, so you are right that oil pressure is causing these phasers on the 3.5 GTDIs to fail. Now this next part is probably the most interesting thing that I read out of this whole comment section, and I actually did not know this before reading this. I'd never thought about it. The thought honestly never occurred to me. So you guys know that if you watched any of my other videos, you know that I haven't never said anything about the 2.7. The 2.7 does not have this problem. I have never seen a cold start rattle on a 2.7. I have heard about a few rare cases, but I've never actually seen one. The 2.7 is like just kind of off over here to the side. It's doing its own thing. The 3.5 has all these issues with Vct rattle. 2.7 doesn't really have any. So Mark says they are pretty much the same phasers found on the 2.7s, but I have yet to do phasers on a 2.7. Exactly what I just said. Mark continues, says, my guess is that as supply for the new heads gets stronger, that Ford will either release an FSA field service action or a technical service bulletin to replace the heads and phasers and maybe even the cams. On one of these engines, when I took off the passenger head and cams, I found the mega cap bearing and journal of the intake cam heavily scored, probably for low oil pressure. Most likely that's usually the case of scoring would be, you know, a lower pressure than what you need to keep a good resistance in between those two pieces of metal. Mark also continues to say that he would agree that a melting oil pump would be a waste. You could have all the oil flow in the world, but if either of these mega caps are leaking, you ain't gonna have sufficient pressure for the phasers and they'll wear out internally like they do right now anyways. I am very glad to see I'm not the only person who uses the word ain't. I don't know if Mark, well, he said he's from Houston, so I don't know if you technically call that the South, but down here in the South we say ain't. I'm really happy to see that other people do that as well. It makes me feel like not so much of a hick. Mark finishes up his comment with hope this helped. I really like this information. I feel like this is very good information from another Ford tech that is doing this every day just like I am, and honestly we're trying to figure out what's causing these issues. We want to know just as much as y'all want to know. So overall I find that very interesting, and what he's saying about the mega caps leaking and causing a lack of oil flow through that cam journal there to the VCT phasers and causing some of the shutter issues and causing some of the rattle issues. I find that very interesting. I really wish that I could like point at something I could say this is the problem, this is 100% what's causing it, but I honestly can't, because I still believe it's an oil pressure issue. I agree with Mark. I think that it's something to do with the mega caps or the camshaft, maybe even the cylinder head. I don't really know, but something is going on with the oil pressure to these VCT phasers. That is the reason they keep rattling. It cannot just be bad phasers over and over again. It's got to be something going wrong with the oil pressure, because if you really boil it down and think about it, if a VCT phaser was damaged and rattling, wouldn't it do it all the time? Why would it only do it whenever the vehicle is sat for long enough that the oil is drained back down? It has to be an oil flow problem. It just about has to be. So that's pretty much my thoughts on what I've learned a general idea of what is actually the root cause and causing this VCT phaser rattle issue. Okay guys, these have been the updates and the new things that I've learned about this VCT phaser rattle, cold start rattle, 3.5 EcoBoost piece of crap issue, whatever you want to call it. This is the things new that I've learned that I really wanted to tell you guys about. The main thing being those recalls. I wanted to make sure that anybody that watches these videos knows that they should definitely go have that 21B10 done. Even if you're scared of doing it just because you're like, well, now it's my vehicle on shutter, don't worry, you can always bring it back and we'll change it back to what it originally was. So have that done, but that's pretty much gonna wrap up this video. If you guys have any questions or any extra info that you wanna add to this about your personal case, or maybe you're a Ford tech and you have a different idea about what's causing this, I would love to chat with some of you guys. Hit me up down in the comments. Let's try to get more comments on this video than we have ever had on one. I think my last one's over 1,000, so get to typing down there, guys. I would love to hear from some of you. To finish things up, if you haven't already went and subscribed, please go do that. I don't want you to miss out on any of the new videos that I have coming up. Also, if you enjoyed the content today and haven't already, please, please, please go smash that like button for me. It really helps me out. I enjoyed it, and I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace out, guys.